Did you know ASBN, America's Small Business Network, is now available on your TV? That's right. ASBN is now streaming on Roku, Apple TV, and Fire Stick, and available for download in the App Store. Scan the QR code to download the ASBN app today. Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.
Hey everyone, Jim Fitzpatrick. Thanks so much for tuning in to another edition of The Small Business Show, exclusively right here at ASBN.com and now streaming on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. Branding is not just a concept reserved for businesses, it's an aspect of how individuals present themselves to the world. On today's show, we are discussing how your personal brand is a powerful tool to grow your business. Joining us now is personal branding strategist, keynote speaker, award-winning author, and founder of selfbrand.com, Cathrine Kaputa. Cathrine has led the famous I Love New York campaign. Who doesn't know that very highly successful campaign? She's recognized as one of the top 30 global branding gurus. Wow, we are so lucky to have you on the show, Cathrine. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule there in New York, I might add, to join us on the show.
Great to be here. Thanks for inviting me, Jim.
Yeah, so before we get started on all of this, talk to us about how the I Love New York campaign, got started, came about, and what the process looked like.
Right. Well, it came about, you have to put it in context. It came about at a time where New York City was suffering. And, we even approached, President Ford for a bailout. And, famously, the New York City headline in the paper was Ford the City Dropped Dead. And late night shows were making fun of New York, last person to leave, turn out the lights. So New York decided, well, let's look at what branding and advertising can do to turn the situation around. And the first thing we spent money on was really research on what was causing the problems in New York and what people really loved. And it was, most people had a really emotional connection. It's, the whole idea, if you really listen to people, they give you the campaign. It was this whole, I love New York, despite its problems, I love New York. And the thing that they really loved was the nightlife. There's particularly the theater. There's only one Broadway and it's in New York. And so we built the campaign around that. One of the first campaigns was Frank Langella, who was starring in Dracula. And his line was, I love New York, especially in the evening.
That's right. I do remember that.
With the cape. And then all the Broadway shows, each musical singing with its own style. So we had this tremendous campaign, started running it, and it it was amazing. It really turned things around. People started coming back to New York, and the whole thing, the I Heart New York by Milton Glaser became so famous. You see it everywhere today.
That's right. That's right.
It's really an amazing turnaround. And of course, a lot of states tried to do their own campaigns to sort of change the situation.
I know. We were just talking about that before we got recording today, that, like Virginia is for lovers, and there's some other things out there too. But I think they all looked at New York as, wow, these guys really knocked the cover off the ball and scored big with this one, right?
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and it's, as I said, it's kind of you're looking for your USP, your unique selling proposition. And what we focused on was the nightlife in the city, and that was the kickoff. New York has so many things, but there's only one Broadway. And so we focused on that, the beautiful music, the I Heart New York, became a classic.
Yeah, for sure. What's interesting too is that probably nothing really changed at all in New York, right, with all of its problems, with the crime and the poverty and the homelessness, and all of those elements probably didn't change much in those early years when the campaign launched. But what did change were the tourists that came to New York and said, okay, let's while we're here, let's focus on what matters to us as a tourist, which are the shows, the incredible restaurants, maybe the Statue of Liberty, some of the other big incredible
right. And we
things
started featuring them too, and we had so many celebrities that were on, Frank Sinatra, Liza Minnelli, that were in all the commercials, and the campaign was so successful. One of our strategies too was to have high production values on the TV commercials so that celebrities would feel comfortable being in them, knowing, and we also had an agreement with SAG, the Screen Actors Guild. Everybody worked for scale. So,
wow,
Frank Sinatra, whatever,
wow,
everybody worked, for very little money, like $300 and some dollars.
Sure.
No
well, and all of those people Yeah, they all had a stake in it, right? I mean, the more people that come to New York, the more people are going to go to those concerts and shows and plays and everything else that those stars are in. So they're kind of helping themselves there, right?
Yeah, snowball effect, exactly.
Sure, sure. So that is in part how you became an expert in the branding field. Do you want to add to that at all? I mean, obviously we're in new times now, but
Well, yeah, let me just, branding is important, and it's important for your company, obviously, but also for your brand you. And because, if you don't brand yourself, other people will. And I can guarantee you they won't brand you the way you want to be branded.
Very good point.
It never happens that way. But believe it or not, I started out as an art historian, and my first job was at the Seattle Art Museum, and my field was Asian art. And I got in pretty deep. I studied Japanese. I worked at a PhD at Harvard, and then I had a personal branding crisis. Is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? And I decided, well, maybe not. And so I came to New York City, which I'd always loved, and was looking for a job. And, it was a very hard thing. If you had been working at a art museum, they couldn't see how you could fit into an ad agency, and they thought you were too academic. So in that early thing, I was kind of pitching myself, I'm an art historian, but I want to make a change into advertising. Well, no one cared about that pitch. It was a dud. And so I changed my pitch to, I'm a marketer for difficult products. And I talked about working at the art museum, putting on shows. I had to be more creative and coming up with ideas and to get people in and draw. So, and somebody bought my pitch, and I, got started in an ad agency, and the rest, once you make the leap, and then you've got the experience and stuff like that. So, so it's important to take charge, because people were branding me in a way that I didn't want to be branded as an academic that couldn't even, work in any job in an ad agency, to somebody, marketer for difficult products. And I said, give me your tough campaigns, give me your tough products. That's what my strength is.
That's fantastic. I love it. And to your point earlier, if you don't create your brand or at least have control over it, to your point, people are going to do it for you. We're all walking around with a brand. I mean, every single day. We might not identify it as such to say, this is my brand, this is the way that I want the world to see me. So when they walk away and somebody says, what was that person like, or what do they stand for, or what do they mean, or what have you, they can rattle it right off. And it's something that you've got control over and created, rather than being less aware of the fact that you're walking around as a brand. It's really a reputation, right, of sorts?
And it's like standing for something of value that other people recognize and that is relevant and important. And so, if you, as I say, as you were saying, if you don't define yourself, other people will.
That's right.
And you want to take charge of that.
Yeah.
And it can be very powerful.
Sure. So let me ask, branding is often associated, as you know, with businesses. Everybody would refer to the Nike swoosh or Starbucks logo or McDonald's with the golden arches and all of those types of things. But how would you define personal branding, and why is it important for individuals? We touched on a couple of things, but let's drill down on that.
Right. Well, it's this whole idea of, standing for something as value that's different. The key thing you want to look at, in the branding era is, looking at a focused idea. A lot of people try to be everything to everybody. Well, that's nowheresville in branding. Being a Jack or Jill of all trades is not helpful. You really want to stand for something and you want to stand for something that's very focused, that's very different from what other people are branding themselves or marketing themselves in your area of expertise. And also, it's got to be relevant. It's got to make a difference in terms of what you do. And, you just look at some of the people that are in the news today, for good or bad. One example is Sam Bankman-Fried, who just got convicted, with the whole Bitcoin issue. But he was a real fan of branding, and it helped him, his tremendous rise in a very short period of time. He branded himself as kind of the boy genius, this wild hair like Einstein, and the shorts and the T-shirt that was wrinkled and stuff like that. It was kind of communicating, this guy's so brilliant and so busy, he can't bother to, clean clothes or anything like that, or dress appropriately.
Which is kind of a spin-off from Steve Jobs with the mock black turtleneck, and then of course the T-shirts that are, and the khakis that are worn, by the founder of Facebook and what have you, and Zuckerberg, and it's just kind of like, that's the new cool. Right, that's their brand. Like, I really don't care about top brands names per se, because I'm so focused on the work that I do, right?
Right. Right, exactly, exactly. I mean, not a lot of people want to talk about the role that branding plays, but it's there.
It is.
That's the
It
key
is.
thing. Yeah, it's
That's
there.
right. That's right. So let me ask you, what are the first steps in building a personal brand? There's a lot of people that are watching you right now and that are trying to get their hands around this. And then, of course, when you lay on top of all of this, social media, which everybody thinks, well, that's where I'm going to start my personal branding. But what tips would you share with us
Well,
today?
the branding process is, step number one, you want to analyze to find your brand ideas. So, we do, in the business world, market research, but, you get research too. What do people compliment you on? What do people think you're good at? And what do you think you're good at? What do you want to be known for? See, and you also include like a competitive analysis. Who do you see as your key competitors? What do they stand for? How are you different? What is the value you bring that's different than other people to a business situation? So analyze to find your brand idea, number one. Number two, you want to package your brand. In the branding world, we think of visual identity, what's a brand going to look like? Verbal identity, what are you going to name the brand? What are the messages? We think of brand personality of businesses or products as if it were a person. Well, you already have a personality. So you want to think of, does your visual identity and verbal identity, does it coincide with the USP, the, brand idea that you want to be associated? You want everything to work together. And it also, obviously, you want to be authentic based on your strengths and your abilities, not copying somebody else. And the third step is, marketing the brand. We do advertising campaigns, social media. Well, YouTube too. You want to be known, be active, it could be on any level, whether it's you want to be well known in your company to stand for something, or you want to be well known in your industry or on a larger stage. And, the thing that's interesting now is there's social media, which doesn't cost you money like, a Super Bowl commercial, but it's time consuming in the sense of coming up with your messages and putting them out there.
It is. There's no question about it. However, to your point, it is free, and for business owners that want to get their name out, or even people that work inside of companies that are maybe they're in sales or what have you, it's time well spent, right? And it's also time that might not pay a dividend for some time to come. I've spoken to business owners that say, "Oh, I tried social media and I did it for a month and I didn't get anything." I mean, come on,
Right.
really,
Well,
that's like buying one television spot and look, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Exactly. I mean, the whole thing, they talk about in advertising is net effective reach. You have to see a commercial like for 7+ times before you remember it. So that's what you got to think of. It takes time, and it's a cumulative process. And, it includes different things, social media, you can speak to industry groups and, various things that are part of it. That's part of your brand. And I think, today in the new world of work with hybrid learning, remote working, and situations like that personal branding is more important than before, because it's, it was always difficult to get known, in your company or in your business, but now it's harder with a lot of people working remotely or in a hybrid. So you really want to take that into account.
Catherine, a number of our viewers out there are in their 50s and they have early retirement and they've decided now to go into their own business. Maybe they're going to start a shop, or they're going to be a consultant, or whatever the case might be. If I'm 55 years old, is it too late for me to be thinking about personal branding?
Not at all, not at all. And I think that, it's an interesting phenomenon that's taking place because, people retire early and they think, oh, this is wonderful. But, if you've been like a gung-ho type A personality, what are you going to do all day long, And so the advantage of a lot of setting up your own business, particularly if it's a consulting business or things like that, you can decide, well, I'm just going to do it for 20 hours a week or however you want to build it. But it gives you, it's very important to feel relevant. That's why a lot of people get involved with charity work too, which can be very valuable using your skills and talents. Because you don't want to just sit around and wait to die, so having your own business, yeah. So, and I think that, there's a lot of interest in the kind of intelligence and background that you've had that you can bring to the party as with your own business.
Yeah, no question. Never too late. Very important that you do it. To your point, Catherine, everybody is walking around as their own brand. It's a question of if
Right.
you want to have, a say in what that looks like and sounds like. And one last question: isn't a brand just a logo?
No, it's really a brand is much bigger than a logo. That's it's a good question because most people think it's all on the logo, and the logo is important. But what's more important is the messaging and being consistent, being relevant in the marketplace. One thing I tell people too is to think of there are two kinds of power. Soft power and hard power. And a lot of people think, it should just be my work that stands out. And, I don't believe in this personal branding thing. But if you look at the world of business and the world, people, it's not the hard power, which are the hard, tangible things you can put on your resume, or for businesses that's your inventory and your bricks and mortar and things like that. What's important is soft power today. And it's all the intangible things that mean so much. So for people, it's, your reputation, it's who it's your personality. All these things, really determine your brand and are important to, compete today.
No question about it. Catherine Kaputa, Keynote Speaker, award-winning author, personal branding strategist, and founder of selfbrand.com. We'll show all the information here on the screen if you want to learn more about her services and what she can help you with in designing your brand, maybe for you or your company. And if you want a great speaker, she's available for that as well. So, Catherine, thank you so much for joining us on the show. We very much appreciate it. I know that our viewers are going to get a lot out of your visit with us here today. So thank you so much.
Okay, thanks for having me, Jim. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us for another edition of The Small Business Show with Jim Fitzpatrick, exclusively on ASBN.com.